Tēnā koutou katoa e nau mai haere mai ki KPMG. Ko Nicola Grigg, tōku ingoa. I'm Nicola Grigg, the Industry Lead Financial Services here at KPMG. And we're delighted to host the Financial Services Empower Women event today. At KPMG, our purpose is fueling New Zealand's prosperity in all its forms. And that includes championing financial inclusion and financial well-being. Today's kōrero is an important part of that very discussion, ensuring the promotion of fairness, transparency and equality. And we are glad that we can offer our support to that today.
I want you all just to take a moment to look around the room, a full room, a room full of aligned minds, of people coming together, wanting to make a difference for women in the financial services industry, looking to understand how they can implement gender pay gap reporting in their organisation. For me, this is certainly a room of rock stars, and on behalf of, on behalf of FSC Empower Women, the working group, I'd very much welcome you and thank you all very much for being here. With the financial services industry's gender pay gap at now 23%, not 29.3% as we had started, so we just had an update on that, is compared to the New Zealand average of 5.2 in the June quarter, and with only 23% of FSC members reporting through the Mind the Gap register, we certainly have great scope for improvement. With a focus on impactful action and change, Empower Women was delighted when the FSC board, many of the board members here with us today, unanimously approving our initiative aimed at reducing the gender pay gap across FSC member organisations, to promote the use of the Ministry for Women's Gender Pay Gap tool and encourage voluntary reporting of pay gap data. The goal being to aggregate the information to establish an industry-wide benchmark for gender pay gap reporting amongst members. And as has been proven time and time again, what gets measured matters and gets actioned. This event is the start of that action towards impactful change within our industry, as we initially look to raise awareness around the Ministry's gender pay gap tool here today, including hearing from many members of organisations who are actually using that tool currently. In opening our event, I would like to acknowledge the Minister for Women, the Honourable Nicola Grigg, who needs no introduction and who works tirelessly in the interests of women, for her support of our initiative. The Minister is joining us. Welcome, Minister.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for indulging me, allowing me to attend online. I just got back from Malaysia with the PM late last night, so just needed to get a few ducks in a row at my end. But thank you so much for the invite. It is really cool to technically or sort of virtually be in a room with so many great women, and I tai tōko to everything you were just saying, Tracey. I was actually wishing I was in the room because I was jumping up and down, walking to button constantly, and have my sake of it, just endorse and agree with absolutely everything you'll say. And of course, you know, for a room full of go-getters like yourselves, it's very clear that today is a day about action, and that how we can all collectively continue to work together to close down that gender pay gap, to drive transparency and ensure that women's financial well-being is prioritised across the New Zealand financial services industry. So I do want to acknowledge the incredible work of the Empower Women Network, and particularly Prue and Tracey. You know, your work we've all watched from afar and admired greatly, but it is really starting to drive uptake of pay gap reporting, and you supported initiatives like Make Menopause work, of which we launched just 2 weeks ago, I think, and you're obviously big helping drive all those resources behind the Retirement Commission's Empowering Future strategies. So you guys are doing some really, you girls are doing some really heavy lifting. I just want to acknowledge you publicly for that, because it is deeply appreciated. That really valid work, so thank you. I love that speaking to a room like this, because I feel like, if you don't mind me making the assumption that I am preaching to the converted, because we know that these are conversations that we as a country need to have. And in fact, the speech line I had in front of me, these are conversations that women need to have, but I've already edited that out loud, because it is we as a country, you know, all the good stuff like pregnancy and menopause and balancing work and childcare, but as well as stepping up into those leadership roles, helping women, allowing women, enabling women to know their worth, and to demand equal pay. They're not just women challenges, and that's one was really clear to say that they are people challenges, they are societal issues, and they of course affect the well-being and the prosperity of our communities. So supporting women's representation and closing the gender pay gap is really at the heart of my work as the Minister for Women. And so that's why I am here today alongside Kellie, acknowledging you in the room, Kellie, the CEO of the Ministry for Women. We're here to introduce you to our Gender Pay Gap Toolkit. So as we progress further on in the conversation, and we're really look forward to talking more about that in detail. But I'm really, really privileged at a personal level to be the Minister for Women. I'm sure that my journey, like so many of yours, has had its challenges. That we have all face bias and assumptions about our capabilities. And whether that's just through dismissive comments or outright bias, I think that it is still alive and well in our society. But, as I said earlier, it is collectively, we can lean into this and we can affect some real change, because it isn't just that women's issue, as I keep saying, it's a people issue. But, we as New Zealand are really making progress in this. Tracey just acknowledged, for our pay gap to have dropped nationally just in the past year from 8.2 down to 5.2%. That is incredible. And that really does put us as an outlier and a world leader. So as much as we sit and say there is still so much more to do, let's just pause a moment, take stock, because that is a really good result. So well done, everyone involved. And for us all to have got to the positions that we've got to, I for one, am really happy to acknowledge I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I didn't get here by myself. I've had all sorts of encouragement and mentors and guides along my way. At a family level, my great-grandmother was one of the very first female MPs in the New Zealand Parliament. In fact, she was just the fourth to enter the Parliament, certainly first for the National Party. In 1942, and so I have a photo on my wall, because I think every day we need a little bit of a reminder and a prod that if those that were before us could do it, then so can we. But I found it quite extraordinary when I entered Parliament just after the 2020 election. I gave my maiden speech, and of course I've read hers prior to that she'd delivered 18 years before me, and I just thought of that's sort of incredible that there I was banging on about the same stuff that she'd been banging on about 1942. So that's that point. We can't up me, but there's still more to do. But a lot of that talking about equality in society, to achieve that, we've all got to work together to achieve pay equity. And I wanted to talk to that because you're all seeing the law passed by Parliament this year. So I just want to walk you through a little bit about why we've done that. I do want to be absolutely abundantly clear that we fully support the concept of pay equity, and that obviously refers to men and women being paid the same but for different work. But we had made changes to the Equal Pay Act, and that is to assure that the pay equity scheme is fit for purpose. We felt very much that it had gone completely outside its lane and was no longer able to prove genuine issues of sex-based discrimination and undervaluation. So we wanted to make sure that there was a fair, robust and enduring system for raising and resolving pay equity claims. We believe that the system is very, very geared towards allowing groups to raise and resolve claims, and you will have seen Finance Minister tax money this year's budget. So we're really looking forward to first being raised and getting up and running, and if they can improve genuine sex-based discrimination, then all things being equal, that will be settled. But again, I really want to be abundantly clear, we are not talking about equal pay, and frankly, if I were to be a part of a government that was, I would no longer want to drive the still. But look, let's talk, if I can just helicopter around a little bit from that. Across the country, women are making really important strides in both business and employment, but we all know that there's those real persistent issues that can at times feel quite intractable that are continuing to limit, I say, there's again speeches there, but I would say our full economic participation. Again, I know I'm talking to a room full of entrepreneurs and financial brains, but you'll all know that women now own 1 in 3 SMEs. Wharton and Grigg was stacked. But significant barriers remain, and we know that women are more likely than men to face difficulties in raising capital, that there's limited opportunity to scale up and grow those enterprises, and that funding gap is really critical to that equity issue. So I think, again, it's something that we are all going to have to collectively turn our minds to at the very near future, if not yesterday. In that broader labour market, and this number is quite staggering, 220,000 women are underutilised. But therefore, that means that they're unemployed or they're underemployed or available to do more work hours than they're currently doing. That's mostly concentrated in that part-time and lower paid roles, and that's often as a result of disproportionately carrying that unpaid caregiver type role, whether that is for children, for the elderly, and in some family situations. But those pressures are felt in financial services industry, interestingly enough, where, as Tracey just acknowledged, there is unfortunately a pretty significant pay gap. Pleased that it has gone down, Hosek, but still fairly high. And I know you are all collectively leaning into that. I think that's the best part of the puzzle is to own it, because that's where the work starts and that's where the results generate from. But we all know that the economic potential of those underutilised women is huge. And therefore, I think, we had not just a fiscal obligation, an economic obligation, but I think a moral duty to address it. So we, for our part, are really committed to making that happen. You may have trained watched about there who watched Keep an Eye on Policy. We've done things like introduce tax relief for families for that first time in 14 years. We have provided some substantial report through a policy called Family Boost about providing rebates for families that have got children and doing child care. I'll talk a little bit about health in a minute, but I think improving women's health services absolutely critical to women being able to participate fully in the economy. So I was so thrilled just the other day to be part of an announcement with the Health Minister around rolling out fully the increased breast screening age for women in their 70s before they'll give them another couple of screens through it in their lifetime, which will save lives. And that's, I think that's probably the most important thing we can do. We've also increased paid parental leave about 6%. So we're just trying to do what we can within this economic environment that we're in to help families try and balance those work and caregiving responsibilities. But I really focused on what we can do from a policy shift level, because we are not the biggest ministry in the government. We do not have a budget of hundreds of millions, as much as Kellie would love us to. If we've got to do things, we've got to be the squeaky wheel and make those policy shifts that will make a difference to women and girls in this country. So for just talking to that, I thought when I took on this ministry that I keep my priorities tight, but I wanted to be able to actually achieve things rather than just push out a whole lot of PRs that actually didn't really say anything or achieve anything, most importantly. So I kept it down to 4. The first one is around economic empowerment as an absolute top priority for me, for women. We need to get more women into leadership roles, especially in that private sector. We know with the self-imposed target government, we've kept women's representation at over 50% for 5 years now, but actually in the private sector, without any self-imposed target, it's still sitting at just over 30% of those NZ explicit companies. Obviously, driving more women's leadership roles drives them into higher paying roles, and that's what we're about at the moment. So those who don't know about the Ministry for Women's Nomination Service, we're going around the country, and please, if anyone's interested, get involved, getting as many women with leadership aspiration or directorship aspiration to register with our nomination service. We then roll those contacts out to various appointing agencies or ministers. That's how we keep that 50-50 balance. And I sit on a cabinet committee that makes those appointments, and I send my cabinet colleagues quarterly updates as to how they're tracking, which just a gentle reminder that they need to keep appointing women. But ultimately what I'd really like to do is roll that service out to the public. So watch this space. I'm just trying to rebuild it because it's a bit old and redundant, and we're just getting lots of new names and faces in the database so that we've got a really great offering to take public in the next year or so. As I said earlier, one of my big priorities is around improving women's health. So we are reviewing women's health services across the public sector. I personally believe there is a real illiteracy out there in women not understanding or not knowing what they have rights and access to that is publicly funded. So if you think about women's health lifespan, so to speak, you start at puberty and go through conception and maternity care. Perhaps you do actually endometriosis somewhere along the line, and then there's cervical, breast, bowel screening, big bang menopause, all the big things. So we're working with Casey Costello, who is the Minister responsible for women's health, to try and help uplift and populate the women's health strategy. So bit of work to do there. Still don't get an announcement, but you'll hear from us when it's all ready. The third of my 4 big priorities is around tackling online harm, particularly, and abuse. That as anyone who has experienced it will find, it does silence women. So back in May, before the launch of local government elections, we launched a toolkit called Free to Lead to help women participate safely online. So therefore trying to produce one of those barriers to women stepping up into leadership roles and into public facing roles. So please do go and have a look at it. There's some really neat resources for those who are suffering harm, but also for their employers. We think it's really, really crucial to keeping women in those public-facing roles. And so that's probably a little bit about the background. What I'm here today, clearly, is to talk about our gender pay calculator. As we've said, the gap in this country is actually something to be proud of, but there are those services that are outliers, and not just wanting to target financial services. It's across the board. It's in legal services. It's in construction. There's a lot of sectors that are well up there. But again, I say, if you're measuring it, good on you. That is the first step. So the numbers just a number, but take this as the best first step is to start measuring. We know women do generally earn less money than men. That therefore there's fewer chances to save and invest for the future. So that's why we're really keen to lean into this, because as my father always used to say to me, it's all very well being young and poor, but being old and poor is pretty dire. And the Retirement Commission has reported that women will have up to 36% less than their Kiwi saver each year, and that is a stark figure, and we should be zealous of it. So closing that gap is not just the right thing to do, it clearly makes good economic sense. So to support businesses, we have developed the first ever government debt calculator toolkit, and it is free. It's really easy to use. It has been developed by business for business with a common methodology, and just acknowledging anyone in the room today from the likes of the Law Society or Diversity Agenda or Westpac, Marie, Portsmouth and ANZ, you have all been integral to helping us design this thing and road test it as importantly. So really do appreciate your help. But again, and I know you've got to do it, you'll all go away and get online. Once you do get online and have a look at it, you'll see it's really easy to input your numbers. I just had to have, a business of 10 men, 10 women as a minimum. And then I think the best part about it is that you can then download a tailored action plan with tips and tricks as to how to address the gap, how to take the practical steps. So, it's a really exciting opportunity. It's had incredible organic uptake already, which I've been so thrilled with. But first time, you will note, it does not calculate at this point ethnic or disability. But as on next month, we will be launching the second iteration of it, which again, all of those businesses that have been helping us iterate it have been able to input into a common methodology to calculate ethnic pay gap and disability, because we know they are significantly high and warrant a lot of work. So really looking forward to being able to launch that, I think in a couple of weeks from now, actually. So it's really neat that we have been able to work with business, because as I say, wanted that organic uptake, wanted it to be user-friendly. So as I say, to make this thing work, all this to be a success, I need you, please, and your networks to help us out. Please do share the calculator toolkit across your networks with your HR departments. or I don't want to get bored, why not? Of course, all your colleagues, your family and your friends, particularly for those of you with daughters, I cannot emphasize enough how we need to educate the younger generation of women to feel empowered enough to ask an employer, they'll ask their business, what is your pay gap? Am I being paid the same as my male counterpart? And if a business is not doing it now, I'm afraid it's not an excuse, because here is a free government resource to be used. So sorry to be a bit forward-leaning on that, but I just really, really want younger women to ask, because I never did. I've never in my life asked for a pay gap. I've never even asked for a pay rise. I'm very, very ashamed to say. So look, please, if you are a business leader, please start measuring it. It's a really simple first step, and it's a brave step. So good on you for taking it. And don't be afraid to publish your results. Build that transparency, attract that talent, publish it on your website or in your annual report. Doesn't matter, just keep that conversation alive. And as I said earlier, if you have leadership aspiration or anyone across your work networks that does, please encourage them or yourself to register with our nomination service. There is so much cool stuff that we've got going on at the moment. There's so much still to do. There's so much that we are, rightly are very, very proud of. Let's not forget we are the first country in the world to have women right to vote. So why not be the first country in the world with a 0% pay gap? Wouldn't that be something really meant to hand on to the next generation? But I do, again, want to end the day by thanking the Financial Services Council, and especially to Empower Women, Pro and Tracey, for leading from the front. It's really neat that we've got women like you to look up to, and thank you for the courage and the commitment for everyone in the room who's collaborated with the Ministry for Women. I think together we can close this thing out. And we can build a future for women in New Zealand to be economically empowered. And I think, that can happen very, very soon. So look, thanks so much for your time and attention, and all the very best for the rest of your day.
Tēnā whātua katoa. It's great to be with you all here today. Thanks so much, Tracey and Prue, for bringing us all together to talk about pay gaps and this toolkit that we've built with business. It's fantastic that the FSC's board has encouraged the use of the toolkit and voluntary reporting, and I'd really like to acknowledge Rog Flanagan and Kirk Hoad for that decision. The way in which you reckon together, it does demonstrate leadership here, and I think also shows other sectors and industry groups how they can work to achieve change. I thought I would start out by just pulling a few of the definitions up on the page, because I think that some of the language is quite technical, and I think it can also create a little bit of confusion about what we're talking about. So in terms of the gender pay gap, we're looking at the gap between the median earnings of women compared with the median earnings of men. So it's not looking at like-for-like gaps. There's something that, of course, in the course of thinking about remuneration and gaps is something that we'll do, but that is not what the gender pay gap is. The gender pay gap is looking at things at a more macro level. So we look at it from a country level, and others have touched on the New Zealand gender pay gap is 5.2%. That is down 3% from the previous year. And also for the industry grouping that you're in, your pay gap is also come down over that period also. So you can look at it from the country level, you can also look at it from a sector or industry level, and also from an individual business level. So that is what we are focused on. And it picks up a number of things. Some of them are quite complex, and some of them is not necessarily a quick or easy fix. It's some things including structural factors like occupational segregation. Some professions have been female dominated, others have been male dominated. There are workplace practices, how bonuses are managed, how progression is managed. There are societal factors, the notion of what women's work is, what men's work is. All of these things are at play and get picked up here. There is also bias and discrimination, and sometimes these things happen unconsciously. So it's about how we have systems and processes to identify that. We also have the opportunity, when we're thinking about pay gaps, to think about it from different perspectives. Wahine Māori, pay gap is 12%, and Pacific women have the largest pay gap at 15.8%. So it's always worth kind of digging in a little bit further and seeing what's sitting behind that. Many of my colleagues from other jurisdictions, including Canada, the UK and Australia, are really envious. So we do have a lot to celebrate, but there's more to do, and that's what we focused on. In the course of this work, we launched this in November last year, and we had already at the ministry been focused on pay gaps and some other things around that, but we were approached by businesses, and it was actually an industry group, and we said, we're doing this on behalf of a number of different colleagues. We're making good progress, but we've got some barriers and we want to work with you on it. So we worked with them to really start to get through some of the barriers that might be stopping businesses from taking this up. So one of the things that really stood out was that business wanted a consistent approach. They wanted it to be able to be something that could be picked up and used by businesses of any size. There are some caveats around size in terms of public reporting. You need to have at least 10 men and 10 women to do that safely. There is still work you can do internally, but it's how you ensure privacy. But they wanted it to be able to be used by a whole range of businesses and organisations. They were really keen for results to be able to be shared and recorded. Importantly, they wanted to learn from others, so not reinventing wheels, understanding what worked, what didn't, and sort of and part more of a collaboration as we work through this together. And also that we'd need help and support along the way. There was also a real emphasis on how we support action plans, because it's all very well and good to report a number, but that is what it is. It's a number. I don't know, auditors in the room might have a different view. What really matters is what happens next, and also building your understanding of what's sitting behind it. So there are a lot of things that sit behind the pay gaps within businesses of sectors, and this really gives you the opportunity to understand that and also to tell your story. That key thing also was it needed to be pragmatic and easy to use and not complicated. We heard a lot that, do you use the mean, do you use the median? It's all of these technical things that were really presenting areas to business. So the tool in itself, and the minister's touched on this, so I won't spend too much time here, but it has a number of components. So there's an online calculator that you can use, and also there's a questionnaire that you can input your data into, and it provides you a starter for 10 for an action plan. So again, it was that real emphasis on what can we do to support business who want to step into this space. So that is what it covers in essence. Learning from others is a really big part of his work, and it's ongoing. It was a clear message from business that they wanted the opportunity to hear from other businesses and see what others were doing in these areas. So the other thing that you'll find on our website is a series of case studies of quite a diverse range of organisations. It also gives us the opportunity to really showcase what organisations are currently doing and create opportunities for them to share and to tell their stories. And I think from a business perspective, it's about taking what resonates and what might work in your industry or your organisation. But we really wanting to speak to a wide range of people. And if you've got a story that you want to share, we'd really love to hear from you. And we can take that out and you can be part of this as well. So some of the things we've heard, for example, the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand, they've been focused on the gender pay gap for some time now. They're quite interesting because it has the New Zealand dimension as well as the Australian dimension, and some challenges that come through there have been quite interesting. But they've taken the gender pay gap and also used it in terms of thinking about inclusion and that sense of belonging in the sector more generally. Ports of Auckland, they've been thinking about new pay gap and what that means in terms of bringing new people into the organisation and their placement in the range. If you're getting people placed in the right spot, that is really important in terms of their earnings and their time with the organisation. And the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, they've actually taken a step of removing pay ranges so that when people are fully competent in a role, they're placed at a position, and that's where all their colleagues are also. And they've done a lot of internal engagement and worked with their broader organisation about how they wanted to take that further. Minister touched a little bit on what's coming next. So in about 3 weeks' time, we are launching the second version of this toolkit. It's not changing any of the fundamental principles underpinning it at all, but we are developing a resource that's specifically focused on small and medium enterprises. We did a survey through Strategic Pay, and that was really to gather more insights and understanding of some of the ongoing barriers that different shapes the sizes of organisations were having. And what we heard was that SMEs needed a bit more to see themselves in it a bit more, because I lead an organisation of 45 people. I'm not in a position to publish my pay gap externally. I don't have more than 10 men in the organisation to do that. So I'm wanting to talk more about what are the different things that you can do if you're an organisation like that. We've also done work with the YWCA focused on young women, as the Minister said, having the confidence and I guess the some tools to start to broach some of these conversations about pay gaps can be quite challenging. And we really wanted to work to support young women early in their career so that by the time that pay gap starts to widen, which generally happens in the 30s for women, and then it's has a very large gap between 40 and 45 years, and then again from around 55 to 60. So really wanting to start now so that as we progress through our careers, we've got the frameworks and the confidence to start different conversations when we need to. We're also evolving the toolkit to include ethnicity and disability and providing information and guidance to organisations who want to do that. We heard from business that that's what they wanted to do. And for me, the real driver is I'd be thinking about Pacific women and the gender pay gap that they had. It's really important that we're able to push into those different spaces. And we're going to continue to promote learning and sharing and showcasing action that's happening around the country. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions, challenges, feedback, stories that you want to tell or share, please do get in touch. We'd really love to hear from you. Thank you.
Kia ora, Evan Batup. I'm the Chief People and Inclusion, I'll get the title right, officer. My mum loves it, no one else knows what it means, here at KPMG. So been working in HR for 20 to 30 years now. Actually started off at financial services, so big circular trip.
My name's Bronwyn Thompson, or Bron. I'm one of the senior HR business partners at Partners Life. My career actually started as an executive assistant in legal law firms. I did my degree later in life, and now working in HR and loving it is my thing. So yeah.
Awesome. If you start with you, Bron, how long has Partners Life been reporting, and how long have you been using the toolkit?
Yeah, so we started reporting probably about, we started measuring the gap probably about 4.5 years ago. We did that very manually to start with, but we've actually started taking on the Ministry of Women's Reporting toolkit over the last 3 months. It's been actually fantastic. Previously it was quite time consuming and it was quite onerous. Now it's literally just pull the data from our payroll system and then just throwing it into the toolkit and voila, it's done. So it's actually brilliant, yeah.
Awesome. And Evan, what about you guys?
So we've been, I suppose, reporting on a recording for about just over 8 years now, and then publicly reporting for the last 6 or 7. So we obviously started before the toolkit came through, but we've actually gone through the toolkit and it's really similar in terms of coming through. So,
and what did some of the things you found, Bron, that what's some interesting insights that you've come up with partners?
So we have at Partners Life, we have a very large female population, about 60% to 40% male. But actually using the toolkit, we were actually able to identify that we have a very high population of females in the lower area or the lower roles, entry-level roles, and a much smaller population in our senior roles. So that's what's caused our pay gap to be quite large. So now it's literally going through and identifying the challenges that female or our women have in those roles and what may be causing a few roadblocks. So we've been able to actually look at our policies, for instance, and making sure that our policies are more gender neutral. Our remuneration within each pay band level, we've been looking at that, making sure that there's no disparity there. We've been able to delve into quite a lot when it comes to our gap. Now we've been able to get to a point where within each pay band level, our gap is quite small. Our challenges are obviously getting those challenges of women going into those more senior levels.
Thanks, Okay, but you guys, have you done a ministry on them?
Yeah, well, we have kind of understood our debt for probably the last 7 or so years. I've been in my role about 4.5 years now. I think too, in terms of thinking about privacy and information, we've kind of developed quite a bit since the year. So initially when I joined, we actually were publishing a pay gap. Because we were so small, it was really volatile and it would bounce around quite a bit. And I think that we just didn't really understand that we weren't at the threshold to be able to do that. So we don't publicly report it anymore because, like I said, we have fewer than 10 men. We've got about 6. So in order to protect their privacy, we don't publish it externally, but we do all the work internally and we think about what are the things as a small organisation that we can do to have confidence that we're not we don't have inappropriate gaps and so on and so forth. Yeah. And also we do have the opportunity to think about things like, developing people for future roles, so quite focused on development and career progression, both within our organisation or beyond, and different workplace practices to support inclusion.
Yeah. So, and what did you guys find that he was?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, so we're very lucky at this point in time where, as I said, this year we got to 0% pay gap for both partnership and general staff, which are 2 different measures. It did shift last month to 0.4, so a little bit. But it's actually probably my number one toolkit from a HR design point of view now, because as Kellie spoke about at the start, it's not equal pay. That should be a given. To be quite honest, you do the same job, you should get paid the same amount. It really speaks to organisational shape, which then speaks to how we're recruiting, how we're promoting, our succession planning, our development, our what is talent conversations. So it's the number one conversation at the exec table to inform the output of the work we're putting in, not just what we're trying to achieve. And also the fact that it's a storytelling tool, because sometimes you do the right thing and have a negative impact. We had an example where it's ethnicity versus gender, but we realised we weren't recruiting enough Māori and Pacifica staff. So we had a real effort in our grad recruitment, which is for us a big part of it, to bring a lot more Māori and Pacifica through, and a pay gap blew out because heaps of Māori and Pacifica started at the junior level. So the right decision had a negative consequence on that measure alone at a point in time. Yeah. So now it's tracking that through some good storytelling.
Yeah, and our prep call, you all said it's not about the number, which is like kind of, I guess, leads into the next question. I guess it's about the starting point. Yeah, the number is the starting point, but it's kind of the stuff that you can then change. And I think that's where I guess the next question is around. Yes, it's not about the number, but what has it changed? How has it changed behaviours, or what are the stories you've then been able to go and change in the business, or how you've done things, I guess?
I suppose for us, it's definitely about that succession planning and talent, and just empowering our managers too to actually consider the development of our female our staff member, our talent. It's finding where those roadblocks are.
Yeah.
So being able to look at the reporting within each level. So you could be progressing really well, and then you have a level that all of a sudden you actually see a spike or a drop. And it's actually understanding what has happened there that's actually caused it, and be able to implement different initiatives to be able to do that. One of the initiatives that we implemented only about 12, 18 months ago is that we put in some unconscious bias training. So our managers actually understood what unconscious bias was. And then from there, we then put in a mitigating unconscious bias through the full life cycle of an employee. So being able to then, empower our managers to understand what it is about unconscious bias throughout that whole journey, not just at recruitment or, just that development or that mid-range, but the whole journey of the life cycle.
And how does it shape total with the parental leave policies? Because you talked about the gap being very obviously at that point. Like, has it informed some of the parental leave and sort of return to work type policies as well?
Yeah, we've our policy is actually it's gender neutral.
Yeah.
We actually encourage it for everybody, but it's your remuneration, making sure that we have a remuneration top up there, providing our parental the woman before they go on parental leave, time to go to medical appointments without losing any pay to do that. Providing they can, before they go, they can actually work only 50% of their time, and we pay them for their full time to actually give them that time, and then that return to work, that progression coming back, so they can actually support daycare and getting the family back into the routine, and that we're supporting that with full pay.
How about you guys? You change some policies and things.
Yeah, so very similar on the parental leave piece.
Yeah.
And it's both what we do internally to support pathways, but actually try and also have a voice and use our voice around how the roles play out in society. Like actually encouraging our male staff to be more active parents and actually role model those behaviours, so that it's not everything doesn't default back. And even little sessions like, having them push back on schools when they automatically call their partners, going, if the school's always calling your wife, even if you put your name down, push back, and actually having different partners and leaders stepping into that piece, because it is about the career path, Oh, yeah. I was on the board of trustees and they'll still not call me, it's horrific. But it's all of that kind of side of it. But actually, and the other big part is, as I said, it's about pathways, and it's about having it come through. So how do we make and step into different conversations, both our male as champions and allies, but also the female staff, about what do those career paths look like, and how do we make it real for people in all different. And actually, I'll pick on poor Nick, who, championing that there's a part-time partnership role, which actually a lot of our staff bailed out of the process, because a partner looks like this square box, which is representing this. Actually, there's different ways you can make different careers paths work.
Yeah, it is really powerful to sort of see it, you can be it, and modelling it for the youngest part. Yeah. Kellie, was there any changes you guys made, or what did you look at that made you behave differently or think about it differently?
So we're in a woman-dominated organisation. It's really important that we have men on the team. So part of it for us is making, it sort of goes into that sense of belonging, and how we're thinking about issues that are things that we're working on collectively. So all of those things that Bron touched on, thinking about flexibility. But for me, a big focus is on career development and making as many options as we can available for our people. Yeah. Yes. Can I just go back to the number? Because it's sort of easy to say it's just a number, but I get that it's quite challenging and quite scary. And I just really want to applaud everyone who's doing it nearly doing it, sort of curious about it. I get that it's really challenging because you can feel it quite personally. You can think about it from an organisational values perspective and think, well, it's not aligned with who we are and what we're here for. But there is a real opportunity to, by doing it, you get to understand what's lying behind it, and you might get to learn some things that you just might not have been aware of. So just really encourage you not to not do it because you're worried about the number. There have been some really large numbers put out there, and some time ago, David McLean, when he was CEO at Westpac, he went out with the gender pay gap, and it was large. And he did it, and he owned it, and he did a lot to develop women in that organisation. My predecessor had the, I imagine, really challenging experience of having a cartoon in the Dawn Post about gender pay gaps at the ministry. So I understand it's not without that feeling of uncertainty and risk. But we'll always be here to back you and to acknowledge that actually being transparent and open about it is leadership. Not doing anything, I just think, isn't really going to take organisations to where they need to be to attract talent and retain talent, and also be able to be responsive for their customers and clients in terms of their expectations as well. So I don't want to be glib about it's only a number, but just own it, understand it, and then think about what you want to do off the back of it.
Can I just build on that? Like, I worked in my last workplace was a tech company, and it wasn't zero. To be quite honest, it was quite a bit north of zero in terms of the pay gap. We actually probably did more. It was actually more impactful for us, not speaking down the KPMG side of it there, because it sparked different conversations at the board and the exec number. Yet we probably kept it internal a little bit earlier while we're working what it means. But it's like it's a journey, but you can only take any journey if you know where you're starting from, and the pay gap number allows you to understand where you're starting from. Then you'll map out where you go from there. But if you're not going to know where you are, how the heck can you know where you want to go?
Yeah, awesome. And actually, you just mentioned the board, even, and that's what I was going to go to next in terms of, obviously, I guess it's really important that this is not an activity for the HR team to do and learn from. It's actually board. You guys talk to how the board in your organisations is, like what the reporting looks like, what the governance is around this.
So we report to the board every 6 months. We provide a paper with all our data with it. They're very interested in hearing how we're going and what initiatives we're actually putting in place to help try and reduce the gap. So it's very, very important.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, we're much in a company full of accountants. They love a good number. We report on it 6 monthly again. Actually, and it's been a real evolution. Like I would say the last couple of years, the real shift, and it goes back to that storytelling. The board are now, and the exec team are asking about, when we're looking at a succession plan, they bring it up in that conversation. And they're referring back to it in other key life cycle moments. Not necessarily what is the number, but going, what impact will this have for the tomorrow with decisions we're making today? So you've seen that maturity grow through as well.
Yeah.
We've heard some quite interesting things from organisations who are reporting and calculating their pay gaps and have got plans around them in terms of those engagements at the board level, that it's actually opening up quite different conversations, including things around organisational transformation and bringing that kind of gender lens into those conversations, thinking about change processes. So what we've heard is that some organisations are really integrating it into their business, so it's not sort of just off to the side by the people team. It's actually front and centre in people's minds, but also how they're thinking about taking their organisations forward, where the challenges and opportunities are. So I think that really speaks to that this does have the potential to really impact on bottom lines.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I've heard too, there's a few businesses that have had, sort of gender networks established within the organisation and sort of quite focused, sort of CPD around it as well. Yeah, so I'll quickly jump to our couple of pit cases. Actually, before I do that, has anybody got questions for the panel?
Yes, I have a.
No, hi guys. I just wanted on the board conversation.
Yeah.
Hi, on the board and senior leadership conversation, how much of a link do you think there is between having gender diversity on a board or in senior leadership to this being an important conversation in an organisation?
So there is research that shows that having a woman chief executive or woman on the board, that often those organisations have smaller gender pay gaps. But I just want to again, with Rob and Kirk in the context of the FSC, they have made these commitments. So it's not an exclusive thing. But sometimes it might just be, and going back to your question, I don't think it's an absolute either way. And maybe as more and more leaders understand that, or have deeper understanding of the different concepts here and why it's important to them from a business perspective, I think that is the thing that will really unlock the conversations, regardless of who's sitting around the table. Like the minister said, we're determined to get more women around governance tables across the economy for a whole range of reasons, but I think there's the potential to do that regardless.
I think it's definitely harder, to be honest, and it's just a lived experience. There's people around the table who live the experience and can, understand where it's come from and what might come through. The education gap to get to understand it is shorter.
Yeah.
So you can make that change faster.
Yeah. Anyone else? Questions? Well,
because we're talking about the financial services gender gap, if you think about the parts of the financial services that have probably the highest remuneration, fund managers, investment banking, stockbroking, etc., I'm curious how I know a lot of the insurance, banks, professional services have been quite strong strides, but I think there are other parts of the sector that have perhaps flown under the radar quite a bit more. And 92% of our KiwiSaver funds are managed by men in New Zealand. So I'm curious how you think about engaging those other parts of the sector that are, frankly, if you think about closing the gender gap as an industry overall, are still very stubborn numbers and probably don't report.
I like that. Probably part of that. I think yes, I acknowledge that, and I think that's part of this reporting is encouraging FSC members to report is about taking their first step, because I think it's actually quite an intimidating thing to think about possibly for those businesses. Because I remember that research and I think of it often, because I do think as well often in those places you may have quite heavily HR and legal teams that are quite female, and then you've got the revenue earning roles which are very heavily males, and this shines a light on that. And as a result, I guess in an ideal world would actually change some thinking around pipelining and all the things that you guys have talked about in terms of changing those various divisions within your businesses that have that real inequity. So I guess it's I guess this is the first step actually to encourage them to try and report in a way that you don't need to show everyone the number, but you can show if you see the number, and we can then benchmark the industry. And then it's around not just showing the number, but it's actually around so what are some things that have worked for other businesses to make those changes or tweak it a bit. So thank you. Yeah, Kirk.
Question for Ron actually.
Yeah.
So it's interesting what you said when you were going through the process. You identified that there are a lot of females in entry-level kind of occupations. So that's a really key bit of information that you need to know about how your organisation is structured, and lots of learnings for people in the room, I reckon. How immediately were you able to change some of that, or understand why that was the case in the first place?
Yeah, it is a challenging one because obviously when we
On the spot.
yeah
It's just something
yeah so when we are doing our recruitment, obviously we are our job ads that we go out are very try and be very gender neutral and make sure that we are trying to encourage not only not trying to only attract a typical person or a typical woman to come into an administrative or phone-based role. But we would like to actually see if we have different initiatives that we put into play to actually try and remove any bias that goes into that recruitment. So what we do is we actually have a added insights psychometric assessment that will do our initial screening, for instance. So we wouldn't even look at a CV or anything. We just advertise it on Seek. We may get 300 or so applications. We don't look at any of them. We just send out the psychometric assessment. We have worked with Added Insights where they that we put the typical questions of what we are looking for on capability and competencies that we're looking for. From there, depending on the scores or the benchmarking within there, that's the CVs we start looking at, and then we try and have a balance of interviews that we come in on a more gender base. So we might still end up hiring a female over a male, and that is what it is. But at least we're putting some things in place to actually try and breach any unconscious biases or any biases within that entry level roles. But it is a challenging one because it attracts a lot of females to that role.
Obviously, I'm sure too with some of the more senior, just in the investment management, back to the last question,
Yeah.
It's rewriting the job ads and making sure that the panel of, as you're just saying.
Yeah. It's a long process. It's complex. Yeah.
It could potentially go be an unintended consequence if you kind of get into almost being so focused on the number that you think, well, I know how to reduce my pay gap. I'm not going to bring women into these roles.
Yeah, we can't.
Or I'm not going to bring young Māori graduates into the organisation because it's going to impact adversely, and I care more about my number than growing
the long game.
The long game. And so I think that's the thing. I think if we focus too much on the number, we're not really being true to what this is all about, which is around opportunities for all of us through our careers.
Structural.
Yeah, the structure. Yeah. I have heard of some organisations who maybe are quite concerned about their number and are taking steps to bring it down. But I think when you step back and you think, is that the right thing to do? I think that's where having your story and understanding what the drivers are, I think is really important for businesses.
And our number in particular fluctuates month on month. So I do the reporting on a monthly basis, and it does fluctuate quite substantially month on month. And it really does depend on, the number of new starters, whether male or female, that are coming into the business, what level that they're coming in at, our resignations, if we had more at that entry level role, or whether we have a few at the other up end, it actually will fluctuate our number quite substantially. We at Partners Life, we do anniversary reviews on a monthly basis at the moment, so that can make a fluctuation depending on whose anniversary is coming in at that particular time. So it's understanding all the little mechanisms that are happening within the business that may actually shift the number, but not overly focusing on it, just making sure that we've actually got some underlying initiatives and understanding what it is.
It's like any business measure, your profit, your revenue, your customer, your attrition, all of those things. You don't make long-term decisions based on short-term movements. You've got to look at the pattern and the driver and treat it the same way.
Quickly. That's fun.
Taking quite a few steps back probably, and maybe from a more opinion-based, I've come across many times, I'm sure many of us have, the people that aren't engaged in this discussion from a structural position, but come back to overall arguments about gender pay gap, probably because I'm one of the people in this room, and the argument of meritocracy comes up a lot in my own life. I don't know if that's a good thing of who I surround myself with, but I assume you're probably all familiar with it. And I guess would love to hear your thoughts on how to combat that in terms of, because things have to change, right, to move forward, just like the number of Māori and Pacific into medical degrees and whatnot. So I guess, any last thoughts on how that can be combated, that very, in my eyes, backward kind of opinion?
there's no easy way to combat it, because the people who bring it up will tend to come into the conversation from a point of view. It's probably my starting point. So you can only move the dial so far depending on where its starting point will be. The way I tend to do it, we tend to do it, is starting off actually going back to what does merit look like, what does talent look like, and actually trying to articulate that, because it can be they look like, often it'll come back and sound like me when I talk about merit, which actually isn't the right thing. So the more you can, this is where these things are facts-based, and bringing those things in, going, what does success look like? How do you bring that one in? And better bring all the elements of success in a row. Like some of the historic ones around, the alpha male go make a sale, that's merit. Actually, there's all this other stuff that wouldn't happen unless other things come into play. So having a more rounded view of that.
Firstly, as chair of the FSC, I'd just like to thank you for all coming along today. I sort of take this a little bit personally, because I've been a person that's led organisations, and of course now I'm in the governance world a little bit, and I see these numbers, and quite frankly, I'm personally embarrassed, because this is under my watch and under our watch. And I sort of take it a bit personally. So how did we get into the space where we're at? And that's just concerns me, because I always sort of prided myself that I was pretty balanced about some of these things. And I think it just does come down that actually I was never held accountable in the journey. We talked about it a lot, but actually it wasn't on my scorecard that I was measured by my shareholders or whatever the case might be. So it's just interesting when you self-reflect, and we're all leaders in our own right, and we just need to step up and take ownership if we're going to make a difference. That's really important. The FSC board endorsed Empowered Women's proposal on using this tool, and it comes into effect with, say, the measure from 31st of December this year. We have over 100 members, organisations, and not all of them will be able to do it. It will be a slow process, but it's a start. Some of our members we've spoken today are doing it. So that will be the leaders and be the example, and we'll use that information to try and affect change going forward. It's just so important. The other observation I'd make is that I haven't heard the argument why this isn't good business sense. Because everything that the panel has said, this is actually good for the business. It's good for the individuals. It's good for the economy. And one of our big concerns from which has already been mentioned from an FSC point of view, is the inequity in retirement, KiwiSaver, etc., for women. This is a terrible disaster for the country, and it's hurtling the individuals and families that are involved. So these things are just so important from a ripple effect on how it will flow through everything. So we've got to start the journey. So the board unanimously endorsed this initiative. In fact, it was a very brief discussion where it was sort of, obviously, why are we talking about, why aren't we doing it? Time to sprinkle, and so really heavily endorsed the start of the journey. The measurement is important. It's important to get it out there. It's important to publish it. No other reason to just show others that they're not doing it, if you like. See that actually it is good. It's just doing the right thing in many ways, and do it. So just applaud and thank Tracey and Prue and for all the work that the Empowered Women do. It is a challenge, but we've just got to put each of us here, just personally, got to take ownership and start the journey. So thank you, and I'll pass back to you, Tracey.
Thanks, Rob, and very conscious of time, and thank you for bearing with us. I think that, the journey keeps coming up. This is a journey. Hopefully you feel part of the journey with us. I think I can sort of see a bit of a sense of a support network that could sort of happen in respect of how we sort of start looking to implement these things within organisations. But we are all on it together, and we will make change together. As the Minister said, the gauntlet's being sent down. Let's move the dial for our industry and make it a better place for women. So thank you so much for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.